Apparently, I do not have the corona.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I snore when I sleep, and it actually dries out like my vocal cords.
Sure. And you get the sore throat, all of that
Yeah,
crap.
yeah. I
Yep.
thought I'm going down.
uh,
We're actually we're going to go live here in 3, 2, 1. There we go.
well, okay, because it says we've been live for 42 seconds. So
Yeah,
you're
it's the software's got to run through this over to there.
sure. It's a server issue, right?
Right. It's modern technology ran by a truck driver.
Right.
So it's like trying to fuck a football. Oh, how are you doing, my friend? Are you okay out there?
Sure. Bored.
Okay.
It's like everybody else. I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything until they told me I couldn't. It really irritated me for one thing. And then, it's been decent weather. The spring is here. We wanted to go, last October, we were planning for a different spring and summer. That was before we were all poisoned by the Communist Party of China. This is really coming out now.
Oh, that's actually part. I'm watching the mainstream media. You just want to reach out and choke them. Because
well, I don't want to touch them, but yeah, beat them with a stick.
Could somebody hit them with a long rod?
Exactly.
It's they're actually talking about things you were talking about in December. Yeah. And they got the scroller across the breaking news, and it's like, wait, you're
6 months old.
Yeah. Way to catch up, mainstream media.
Yeah. Well, it's really sad, though. I mean, I laugh because it is funny about them, but look how many people have died in the meantime. Look how many people have been permanently damaged in the meantime. And that's the horror of this. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It leaves permanent damage, not just in your lungs, but in your heart, your liver, your kidneys, on the endothelial lining of all of your veins and arteries. And that damage, insofar as we know, is permanent the way that the scarring of tuberculosis is permanent.
Is that the oxidated stress? Is that
no, that part we can deal with, okay? That part we can deal with. What it turns out to be is, in a crude way, it's liberated iron deposits, okay? This ferritin. And what happens is you're basically a magnet. All right. Your whole body exists because of the magnetized attraction, the electrical attraction of an iron molecule to oxygen or carbon dioxide. And so that iron molecule floats around inside your blood and attracts oxygen to it. And then later on gives the oxygen to one of your cells when you go. And then when you exhale, it takes carbon dioxide, which is also attached to that iron, brings it back to your lungs, and you get rid of the carbon dioxide. The whole thing depends on this iron molecule. And what happens is the iron molecule lives in your red blood cells, but it is possible, as we've seen from the CCP virus, to create a virus that will liberate the iron of some amount from some of those cells, making them incapable of carrying oxygen for you. So you might as well not even have them circulating around. And also it leaves this ferritin stuff, the iron part of it with a little bit of protein around it, as a deposit outside of the hemoglobin that then gets caught up in your lungs, it gets caught up in your liver, it gets caught up in your gut, and it damages everything. And this is part of what they call, you'll hear them talk about it as ground glass opacities when they do lung X-rays. Okay, and so the doctors are trying to describe what it looks like, and what they've done is they've said, and it's misleading, in my opinion. Okay, the description is misleading, but that's the most common term for it, is ground glass, as though you sucked in bunches of ground glass into your lungs. But really what's going on is because the X-rays go through your lungs and they show up broken bits, if you will, of your body in high relief as being brighter. It's because the material is actually reflecting back the X-ray. It's dense enough to alter the path of the X-ray through your body. So what they're actually looking at is dense, hard stuff in your lungs, not ground glass, kind of, not clear, not translucent, none of that. It's really the iron deposits, the iron and everything, the other minerals that are being extracted by this weapon and left in your lung tissue. And that's why the X-rays bounce off and it shows up as very opaque, which means it's bright on our images because of the reversion of the light to dark that we use. So once we saw those, we should have known then that it was not regular pneumonia. It doesn't matter if it's bilateral, if it's only in one lung, if it's only across the bottom or only across the top. Those things are in dispute, and some people are using them to say that it's not pneumonia. Some people are saying it is pneumonia because of these very same things, but it's immaterial. Yeah, I've actually got some in my coffee. Now, well, here's the thing. This is actually really pertinent, Ben, because so that's the iron issue, and that's why you end up with permanent damage, is because your body gets flooded with this. But we need to go back to chaga and HIV.
Is there any way to evacuate the iron?
Yes, but not by our current medical processes. Okay, so they can't. So the doctors can't vacuum it out of you. Okay, but I am convinced that if you do things appropriately, you can heal yourself to some great extent from this. Okay, so for instance, all right, well that's a different subject, is the repair of it all. There are approaches, but I don't think we can just lightly go over them. Okay, we need to really go into them in depth so that people don't get misled and go off on a wild tangent and potentially cause themselves more problems. That's the issue. Okay, it's a serious subject to repair the body. It's not particularly difficult to understand, nor is it particularly difficult to accomplish, but it will take time. So the people that will repair themselves from corona damage will be with us for years, decades, the way that we used to have people in with consumption or tuberculosis that eventually would have to move out to the West, and they would live in Sedona or someplace in the high desert, and whole communities formed, and that existed for, as the people were there for 10 and 15 years sometimes, trying to get their lungs to heal, this sort of thing. And in Germany, we had, after the previous pandemic last century, they had recovery centers in the 1920s where people all over Europe went into the Bavarian Alps, in Berchtesgaden, Baden-Baden, and some of these other places that later on became vacation areas. And what they went there for was the winds, the high altitude, the air that kept them alive and helped clean out their lungs and so on. So we will have to take that kind of an approach, but I've actually started working with some people, and we've had some success. Some of these guys that have gone through the corona and have had some level of damage. So everybody who gets it gets some level of damage. That has to be understood. Also, we have to understand that anybody that gets it can get it again, and the second time you get it is much worse than the first, and it can be fatal to people really quickly. We lost I say kid, but we lost a young man here just like 3 days ago that was part of our extended family. And he had thought he just had allergies, thought it was just his allergies kicking up. He had a mild case of them, lasted 4 or 5 days. He was well for 4 days and then keeled over, and they're labeling it a heart attack. So it's that rapid with some people. So this is truly a bioweapon. And that's what I wanted to bring up, is that, so I've been really pissed about the Communist Party of China for a long time. and have bitched and moaned about them, but now I'm at serious war with them. And actually, I was just this morning thinking, oh, geez, if only I could go back to the pleasant old days where I was only fighting with the blue chickens and the Falun Gong.
That
Exactly. Yeah. Where the consequences were meaningless, right? Where it was just, ego and that kind of shit. But in any event, so, basically I'm at war with the Communist Party of China because they've poisoned humanity. And it is a true poison, and it is engineered. And now we've got on Zero Hedge today, we're starting to get the mainstream academics coming to the same conclusion that I came to on December 6th of last year, that a bioweapon had been released. Accidentally or on purpose, it does not matter at this stage. But the guy who discovered HIV says this cannot exist in nature. Coronavirus has to be man-made. There's a big article in Zero Hedge. Of course, they won't put that in the Communist Party Twitter, right? I mean, they won't put it on Twitter. This is something else, So I've been kicked off at Twitter. I've repeatedly tried to get their attention, to get it corrected. I'm trapped in this weird little hell of roundabout references within the software that keep me in this trap state, and there's no real way to get back on it. But at the same time, because I got kicked off of Twitter, had me analyze the whole thing and what's going on, and I've decided that as far as I'm concerned now, Twitter and Facebook are both agents of the Communist Party of China and should be removed from the United States. Either we should nationalize them and fire everybody and not have any more communist agents directing our intelligence and our information, or we should prevent them from operating within this country because they've caused the deaths. So Twitter, I'm accusing Twitter of murder by what they've done these past few months in kicking myself, Zero Hedge. Look, they kicked Zero Hedge off for merely asking, could coronavirus be a bioengineered thing? I'd been yelling that it was a weapon, and all they did was ask, could it be bioengineered? And they got kicked off of Twitter. So as far as I'm concerned, they're communist agents. They're the fifth column or whatever they called it in the McCarthy era. And we should, tell Jack Dorsey, I'm sorry, but you're now poor, and we own everything that you used to own. And Twitter, by the way, is either we own it or it's totally defunct and not allowed to operate in the United States because it's poisoning our minds and allowing the Communist Party of China an outlet that they use to pollute the rest of the world. Now, the issue is that the rest of the world is wising up. You got 1.2 billion people in India that are pointing their fingers to the north saying China poisoned us. You've got people in Tibet, Malaysia, Philippines, all through the South Pacific. It's in the South Pacific Islands. So you got people all around here you got people in South America that are now wising up that China is not their friend. Africa is rejecting China, which I never saw that, right? It's hard enough I've lived as a white guy in a military school that was primarily black. Okay, so I was like one of 20 white guys in this black military school. And so I've been the minority, I've been the reverse. And when I was a kid, they used to haul the military kids around and use them to integrate the mostly black schools in the South during that period of time in the 50s and 60s. So as I say, I've lived as a minority and I understand it. And I've lived deeply embedded in black communities, and I grasp the cultural differences and so on. And one thing I never, ever, ever saw was China and Africa. Okay, because it's difficult enough for a black person to exist in our society with all of the various forms of racism that we've got here. But in China, it's blatant. It's slap you upside the head, get out of my cafe, you're the wrong skin color racism.
Yeah, right? They are seriously racist over there.
Yeah, and the Communist Party they're basically Nazis. And they're very sneaky Nazis. They learned from where Hitler screwed up, and they've had a huge PR effort, and they've got thousands of trolls. I finally have basically beaten them off of my server, and I guess they are less concerned with me now because as soon as I dropped off of the Twitterscape, within 48 hours, the intensity of the attacks and the number of attacks on my servers had dropped down to about 20% of what it had been when I was in those last few days when I was hammering on Twitter. My idea was that if we understood what we were dealing with, fewer people would be dead and would be damaged. Because we wouldn't react as though it was a disease. We would react as though it was a weapon and be a lot more scared of it, treat it a lot more differently, wouldn't be out futzing around with so many people thinking, oh, it's a flu. You know, you use bioweapon word and show show some graphic images to people of what it looks like to die of this shit. And you're going to get people self-isolating, and just because the government says they can come out, they're going to say, fuck you, I want to see people walking on that street not dying before I come out.
Yeah. Do you think, or let's actually get back to Chaga.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was real important. Okay, so when I first stumbled into this thing back in December, I recognized that the key to this bioweapon was vitamin C, although I did not understand then why it was so critical and why it had evolved that way. And it had to do with this particular coronavirus being extracted from the bat, into which they put these other nasties that make it the bioweapon. And that coronavirus was a nasty form of coronavirus and was always maintained in the bats at a low level where the bat could exist by continual production of vitamin C on demand within these structures that flooded the bat with like vitamin C drip constantly. Okay, so that was one aspect of it, that the Chinese considered this bioweapon to have a key of a particular level of vitamin C in your body. But I discovered something else at that point. And that is, I was looking at the original sequencing that was done by the Hindu guys, the two Hindu graduate students that were forced to remove it by the Chinese pressures early in probably January or something. But before it was removed, I noticed that it had an HIV inclusion in it. So it was a coronavirus with at least an HIV and a SARS shoved into it. And so as soon as I saw that HIV, I thought, aha, because HIV is very interesting as a virus. It's very deadly and so on, but it has a weakness. It has a weakness called the CL protease, which is the stuff that exists in cells that it requires in order to cause its own, to cause itself to be replicated, to grow in your body. So it hijacks this protease in your body in order to replicate. And so I thought, all right, no matter the fact that this is a coronavirus, it has a sequence in it that is HIV and will present as HIV to the body. Ergo, this is my logic. Ergo, that HIV will demand protease hijacking in order that all of the coronavirus can be replicated. And it appears that that is the case, that if you block, that's why the HIV drugs were so successful early on, but they couldn't be sustained against the other aspects of it. And I understand about that now. But if you block its ability, if you block the ability of the HIV to replicate, then all of the coronavirus can't replicate, and it's stymied. Okay, there's other issues there, some tricky little issues, because it's not just HIV that was stuck in there. But here's the thing. That's why chaga was important, because all of these things came all together. I found a particular compound. I found a computer model of the sequence that showed what compounds would theoretically be available to us to attack this particular genetic sequence from that early extraction done by the Hindus. And so I decided, okay, look, this particular one, it goes to birch trees. I know that chaga mushroom concentrate the crap out of all of the minerals and everything inside birch trees. And I've been taking the chaga for 18 months as an anti-cancer. So I got really serious about investigating that. The very first thing I saw was, throughout much of the world, chaga mushroom is recommended as a HIV protease hijack inhibitor. And so it's like, oh, okay, so it prevents the hijack of the HIV. And if you've got regular HIV, in some countries, they give you chaga. as a prophylaxis against it flaring up. And so, and it's easy to take. And then I discovered all the other benefits relative to coronavirus. The fact that chaga is an immunoregulator. And so it keeps you from having cytokine storms. The fact that chaga is just jammed full of vitamin C, D, and A. And it also has zinc. And then it has this compound 13, which it concentrates, among others, out of the birch trees. And it's antiviral and it's antibacterial. So it's like a real smash kind of a thing. It doesn't just deal with one aspect of this virus. It prevents the virus from getting into the Prevotella bacteria that it wants to hide in, because the chaga gets rid of the Prevotella bacteria, controls that as well. And it's because it's antiviral or antibacterial. And then the chaga also kills the virus on its own because it's loaded with vitamin C and it's antiviral in its very nature, with all these oils, these triterpenes and all these other components within it. So it's really, really, really good. And it'll keep you going absent vitamin C because it's got so much vitamin C in it. So early on, we had 2 test cases, small groups of people in China taking vitamin C alone in one group and taking chaga alone in the other group, and both did fine. Okay, so you didn't necessarily need both. You needed an optimal level of either would get you through it. And so that was good news. And so I decided, well, if either one will do it, then I want both. I want to stomp the shit out of it, right? So I'm there you go. Yep. And then, I've got my chaga coffee here every day and so on. And, it's an immunoregulator. You can't have the cytokine storms. And that's what kills you. And we know now why it does it. We know why the man-made bioweapon is so terrible. It's because it has MERS, SARS, HIV, and coronavirus all wrapped up together.
Yeah, and I tried tweeting out to people. I tried actually calling up New York's mayor's office. They wouldn't let me through. Is everyone was preaching these, respirator machines and all this, and how I understood it was how you explained it was that's not going to do a damn thing because your blood is not absorbing the oxygen. And
correct.
So you're smothering the people.
And you're pressurizing them. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like suffocating in a pressure cooker. Yep, exactly. But in China, see, here's where we got that confusion though. Okay. This I believe this came up as a result of the early things out of Italy. Okay, so when China first encountered this back in December, I was reading that there were 2 within the press that was coming out then in China, having to translate it and so on. I was reading that there were 2 pathways that they were taking to deal with this. One pathway was ventilators, and the other pathway was these ECMO machines, ECMOs. Okay, and the problem is, all right, so now the ventilators try and just pressurize your lungs and shove more air into you. They're sort of like a vacuum cleaner on reverse. But an ECMO, they take your blood out like dialysis, and they put the oxygen and do all the gas cleaning and all of that outside your body. And the ECMO actually worked, all right? And it kept working for these people. But in China, their medical system is such that if you don't pay them as you go, they just shut you off. That's just the way the Communist Party works. And
a second, they're communists. They're supposed to love everybody and take care of them.
Doesn't work that way in the CCP, right? Because the Communist Party of China is basically a mob, a criminal organization, and so they get money at every stage of every transaction of everything in China, or used to. And so they just wanted their money out of the medical system as you go along. So they actually had, so what really struck me was the number of times I was reading about individuals where they died within an hour of being turned off of the ECMO machines. And here's our issue. When those articles were okay. So all of those articles and stuff were removed. The CCP started scrubbing right away. They started scrubbing data in December, I think, and got serious about it as they went into January. So a lot of this stuff just dropped off the internet. I was able to find it being reposted on the dark web, but I was just interested in my own information. I was not trying to be a chronicler or to get evidence or documents or anything like that. It never dawned on me that there was no one else looking at this stuff, because apparently I haven't run into anybody else that was looking at it except a couple of other, quasi-criminal types like myself out on the dark web, right? But anyway, but when those things were translated to the Italians, I saw articles that translated the ECMO machine as ventilator, because they basically, they were written up and if you didn't see it as ECMO, if you saw the Chinese descriptive language of it, it's outside the body ventilator. Well, it's also the same thing as inside the body ventilator in terms of how it was translated. So I think it was mistranslation. So I was pretty convinced that they really wanted to be using these ECMO machines and not the ventilators. And I tried to get but you can't get officialdom's attention. Normies don't pay attention to, old bald farts that think they know something on the internet, because if normies did pay attention to us conspiracy guys, they do nothing else than listen to all of our batshit things all day long, right? But nonetheless, there are times where indeed we are correct. And I was correct about a lot of this stuff in spite of how I learned it. And it's becoming more and more obvious as we go forward that my initial understanding of it back in December was quite accurate, even though I didn't know why vitamin C was key. I knew the Chinese Communist Party knew exactly how much they needed per person and were desperate to get it to their Navy. And now what do we see? We see articles about how the Chinese Navy is all gleeful that they're not sick, but every other Navy on the planet is sick. And they're sick to the point, and see, there's the thing, guys. A lot of people don't understand. Say that you had 4,000 individuals on an aircraft carrier that were your pilots and your Navy guys, right? If we just did simple math and said, well, there's probably 500, maybe there's 500 operational Navy guys. So Navy guys doing clerking or flying jets that don't really, so these are not operating that boat. They're just doing the mission the boat was supposed to do. But if there were 500 of those guys only, and half of them got sick, well, it doesn't matter if the rest of the guys are all healthy. If half your pilots are too ill to fly, or your flight crews are too ill to get out and do their work, you don't have an aircraft carrier. And the fact of the matter is that we're getting operational people that are getting ill. And the Navy's done studies that say that, 24 hours on a ship in low pressure and sea, and everybody's effectiveness is degraded by at least half because of the rolling, the yaw, and the pitch. This combination of these three movements, and in 24 hours, half of your effectiveness is gone because you it's hard to do stuff. So it's difficult anyway. And so now here we have the Chinese Navy saying we're all fit and happy and healthy, and pointing at everybody else and saying, ha ha ha, you guys are all ill. We can come and take you over right now if we wanted. And that's pretty close to the truth. But I don't know that I believe the reports coming out of China that their Navy is unaffected. Okay, the reason I say that is because of the devastation of this virus going through China right now. They're supposedly on their second wave, and no, they're still in their first wave. And they, as we all are within the whole planet, we're all still in the first wave of this because it's a bioweapon. It's not a disease. And the first wave is still devastating Wuhan and huge areas of China. Their military did not escape and could not have escaped, even with the possible exception of the submarine bases, because I know that they sealed up the submarine bases with the vast quantities of vitamin C that they were literally lifting up with cranes on the back of semi trucks and setting into the military base. So, the rest of the Navy's got to be as toasted by this as is all of China. And an interesting aspect of it is that humanity's enemy, the Communist Party of China, has not escaped this. Their Communist Party middle echelon. So like their version of governors, lieutenant governors, um, you know, leaders of the military, all of this kind of stuff. What we would think of as like the power elite, not the ideologues that keep them up, but that little band just down below from the top dogs. That area was hugely hit by this disease to the point where the Communist Party of China invested. Now, bear in mind what I said about their medical system. If you don't pay as you go along, they'll kick you off that machine and get the next person to pay for it, right? And you die. And I was reading report after report after report on the dark web of this happening to people's relatives, and they were just so angry. But in any event, during that same period of time, the Communist Party of China was so hard hit that they invented rapid double lung transplants, all right, for the Communist Party members in response to the collapse of, in response to the ground glass opacity and the collapse of the ability of the lungs to get oxygen into the body. They were thinking that it was due to the lungs being damaged and collapsed, all right, not the blood. And so for a long time, they invested a lot of money in this. Now, they were killing and harvesting the lungs out of their prisoners out of the Northwest in China, in the Uyghur community. And other prisoners, Han Chinese prisoners even, were donating their lungs to the Communist Party officials. But what was telling, exactly, but what was really telling about this, even they were these guys, even after they did this, of course, during the process, their blood has to go through one of these ECMO machines during all of this gas. And so that's what was keeping them alive. But the Chinese Communist Party was bragging about they discovered the way to fix coronavirus severe cases was these double lung transplants, and they would be happy to help and share this with the rest of the world. But as soon as they took those people off the ECMO machines to put them back on their lungs, those brand new lungs, unaffected, were almost instantly affected with the virus, and those people perished. So there's been reports that there's still one guy that's been on one of these ECMO machines who was high enough up there that they just kept him going. And he's been on that machine for over 60 days. That was when I lost track of him. He'd been on that machine for 60 days. So maybe they're trying to keep some of their guys alive very ghoulishly with long term on this. But I think they've recognized that double lung transplants are not going to work. But the fact that they were doing that tells me that upper echelon, where they have a huge investment, because these are the intermediate power brokers, right? You know, it's kind of like if your governor goes of a particular province and you're not quite sure that lieutenant governor is going to support you 100%, especially under these kind of conditions, you want to keep that governor alive because you know where his his skeletons are buried, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a tricky situation with them, but you know, they're in deep shit. The Communist Party of China is in deep shit. Not only are the rest of us pissed at them, but their own people are continually rebelling.
You actually said in one of your videos, like last week or the week before, that you think that this was accidentally released because of their reaction. Like they're like, oh shit.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
And I agree with that because I don't see why they would do it to themselves. You know, if you're going to release it, drop it off in the middle of New York.
Well, there's the thing. Okay, so that, all right, let's deal with the latter aspect. They did drop it off in the middle of New York. All right. So there is potentially proof of communist agents or agents of the Communist Party of China in Europe and in the United States, and they were contaminating objects that people would touch with the idea of spreading something. These individuals were videotaped on security cameras. You've seen some of them. Yeah. There's the one that really got me was the woman with the spritzer, the little Chinese woman middle age perhaps, that had this little spritzer that she was just like, she was one of those perfume people, right? And she was just spritzing people throughout the store. And you actually, there's no sound, so you don't know what anybody's saying. But then they come along and you see two security guards come and basically hustle her out because they discover she's not doing perfume or whatever. And then you see other women that are just touching all the computers, wiping all the computers down with cloths that they take out of their purse that come out of these little plastic things, and wiping down all computer keyboards and phones and stuff in places like, Best Buy and other, display areas, right? So they were doing that. But here's the thing. Okay, so I'm assuming it's accidental because of the reaction of the main of the Communist Party of China, and then the subsequent dying of the population, because they never told the population what was going on. Even when it was a disease, they kept killing people that kept saying that it was a disease ravaging everybody and so on, and we've got issues and a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So they were trying to cover up. They're trying to destroy evidence constantly. And so here's the thing. It could be postulated that there would be elements within the Communist Party itself who would benefit if Xi Jinping and the existing power structure were to be convicted by the court of global opinion publicly as having released this even accidentally. So in other words, it could have been accidentally released, or it could have been deliberately released in a way to make it look like an accident in order that the Communist Party of China would take the hit and its existing power structure would be removed, and presumably the guys who did it all would come into power. So there does appear to be some level of support for the idea of interscene warfare within the Communist Party of China. And it may be that someone had the balls to say, well, I'll pollute the world because it'll get rid of Xi Jinping and then I'll be the head of the Communist Party. And however, they were, extremely short-sighted because they were totally unaware of how devastating this bioweapon is, and the fact that, and the potential, the very serious potential that there won't be a Communist Party of China.
Yeah. Well, whether it was an accident or on purpose, it's kind of like pregnancy. We got a baby, and it's what's your opinion of the drug that Trump's actually talking about?
Okay, see, here's the problem with that. Okay, that's hydroxychloroquine, and this antibiotic, one of the mycins, okay, zithromycin or something. All right, so that's what they're really talking about, or these two is a combination of the two drugs. The reason that they work is now understood. All right, so the zithromycin, the mycin is an antibiotic, and it kills the Prevotella bacteria in you, in which the virus likes to hide when your body puts up a defense. And if you have fewer Prevotella bacteria in your gut, you got fewer places for the virus to hide. So that's why the antibiotic part works. The quinone part of it works because of the issue with the iron in the blood. Okay, the chloroquine is an anti-malarial, and it protects the blood from the parasite that causes malaria. All right, so, and it does so by binding that iron very effectively, so it can't be mucked with by the parasite, or in this case, by the virus. So it does work. But here's the real problem. The drug is not widely available. There's restrictions on its supply, and maybe as many as 80% of the people can't take it. All right, around the planet, lots and lots and lots of people can take it, okay? But the military has been using this drug for a long time on troops going into malarial zones. And you could not go to malarial zones unless you could take this drug. And there are many people in whom the doctors would say it's not advised. You're either obese, you have any kind of a blood issue that exists, you've got glaucoma or any of these kind of things. You've got heart issues, you've got diabetes, other kinds of problems with massive inflammation in the body, autoimmune diseases. All of these people, they can't take it. Yeah, there's some kind of interference on the server bleeding in occasionally. But anyway, so the hydroxychloroquine is restricted in who can take it. And the problem is, if you take it and you shouldn't, it's worse than the disease because it'll kill you right off, or it'll make you 100% blind. Or so this thing has fatal repercussions. So it's not like aspirin. Even aspirin kills people, right? But this is much more deadly of a drug than aspirin because of all the pre-existing conditions that you cannot take it with. And of course, a lot of those pre-existing conditions make you much more vulnerable to the bioweapon anyway. Now, by the way, they know there's this guy out there, Chris Martinson, Peak Prosperity. He has videos. He does great work. He's a pathologist, so his thinking is restricted by his training, and so he's not out there saying it's a bioweapon or any of that kind of stuff. He's dealing with it with evidential, empirical evidence, and just trying to describe what the evidence is saying, and not jumping to weird ass conclusions like myself. Nonetheless, though, his work is precise and replicatable, and he's dealing with the data and all of this. And one of the things that they know now is that the United States is getting really hard hit with this because the chief indicator of a bad outcome is obesity. And so if you have a BMI of 30 or higher, you're much more likely to have a bad outcome than if it's lower than that. But even that is mitigated by our bad diets and all of these other things that go into this bioweapon being really nasty, and particularly nasty for the lifestyle of the people in North America. And so it'll also be very, very nasty in Mexico because the high amounts of Prevotella bacteria, the high amounts of obesity, it's very terrible on Native Americans for the same reasons, diabetes, and all of these sorts of things. So there's population groups that are going to be hit very hard with this. And when we examine the deaths outside of the U.S., especially in South America, we find that these projections are quite true.
Are you saying that this actually comes after chubby people?
No.
Okay.
But I am. Okay.
That'd be
no, but I am
my
saying,
chubby ass to be on the ground already.
Yeah. No. See, but what I am saying is this. Here's the problem. It's all interlinked, right? In order to be chubby, you must consume carbs. If you're a carnivore, so if you don't consume carbs, you're going to be lean. All right. It just is the way it is. If you just live on protein and fat, you're a fairly lean individual. That means you don't have very much Prevotella bacillus in you, which is the bacillus that cooperates and hides the virus when it gets into you. So the more Prevotella bacillus you have in your gut and elsewhere in your body, the worse the outcome, because there's more opportunistic alternate hosts for this bioweapon. See, this bioweapon's really unusual, very unusual. And that is that if there's no human around, it'll live in Prevotella bacteria quite happily, because that's where it was living inside the bats. Whenever the bat's vitamin C got too strong for it, it would retreat inside this Prevotella bacillus. And when I say retreat inside it, I mean it would infect the bacteria, take its protease and use its protease to replicate, just as though it had been a human cell. And so if you've got a lot of Prevotella bacillus in you because of a high carb diet, a high sugar diet, then you will have more Prevotella bacillus as a potentiator for the virus, and therefore, if you get the virus, it has more places to spread in you than otherwise. And so we will see that this bacillus, and we do see that now. There's statistical proof that a high carb diet leading to obesity makes you much more vulnerable and much more likely to die, much more likely to have a bad outcome. So if you get it, it's not necessarily going to be the mild kind of sort of symptoms that everybody says exist, which is bullshit anyway, because even with the mild symptoms, you have permanent damage happening to your body as this stuff goes through you.
All right. I'm having weird shit happen to my computer. You're bad too, Clif.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm too toxic, I guess. I've had YouTube not accept 3 of these videos I did. Took me a long time to figure out what was going on. I'd done 3 interviews with people through Zoom. Zoom went through Chinese servers. Now, it turns out the Chinese have figured out a way to get any video they want to fail the YouTube algorithm. They want it, if it goes through Zoom,
it actually traps me in process
forever. Okay,
Yeah.
and here's what they're doing. They know specific image types that will trigger the algorithm. So if you have, for instance, weapons, if you have weapons show up, pictures, and so they just do, basically they're inserting 2 and 3 and 4 frames or 5 frames within every video that they want to be canned. Those frames are literally only inserts of a millisecond, but it's enough for the algorithm to see threatening, anti-community behavior, all of these kind of things in the visual. And so they're just plopping them in, because I found out that those 3 videos that I had done through Zoom, they were different people. I'd done 3 different interviews, 3 different people around the planet. And so there was only 1 guy in the United States and 2 others were outside the United States. And all 3 of those interviews had the same 5 images in them, the same 5 blips in the actual video processing, and they were inserted deliberately as we went through it. So it was a live stream on one, but the other 2 were recorded. The live stream never was broadcast on YouTube. It never got out, and we didn't know it in the process of doing this 45-minute video until we got until we got done with the interview, and the guy went and checked his channel and said, "Well, what the hell happened?"
Yeah, it's. I've had this problem for like the last week, where I'd go live or upload and it'd be trapped in process. I'm like, what the hell is going on with this thing? And it's anybody who doesn't think that we're at war, you don't understand what the hell is really going on.
Yeah, and I'm quite convinced that's the case, Ben. That we're already at war. It's just not yet declared, and most people just don't accept it or understand it. Now, I knew we were at war in December because I knew that the bioweapon had been released, and we were never going back, no matter what happened. Once that bioweapon was out on the planet. And then it became quite evident that the CCP was trying to take advantage of that. So at some point, let's say in January or early February, the Communist Party decided, okay, it's out there, we can't control it, it's killing people, we can't do anything about that, so let's take advantage of it. And so let's keep our assets, military assets, safe, and try and grab as much as we can here. You know, the Communist Party of China just bought a big chunk of the largest financial institution in India, and they're trying to buy giant chunks of Western financial institutions just by printing Communist Party money and going and buying these things during these periods of time when the stock market and everything else and values of these have dropped down. So they're going shopping globally to try and own things, to try and buy up stuff. Now, I think all this will fail because I understand we're only in year 1, that this will go at least 3 years, if not longer, and that within those 3 years, the Communist Party of China will be attacked by all nations on the planet, all peoples on the planet, will be kicked out of Africa. Everybody will refuse to do business with them eventually. Maybe, some of the stands, Uzbekistan and some of these smaller places will be forced to just by proximity. But mostly, more and more people will say, no, I just simply refuse to do business. Like, I'll never buy anything produced in China anymore as long as the Communist Party of China is running the place. These are my enemies. Why should I supply money to them? And if I can't buy it elsewhere, I don't need it. But that's really going to be moot anyway, because the Chinese are incapable at this stage of resuming their position as the manufacturing giant on the planet. And very soon that will occur to all the other nations, that the Chinese are not coming back, and they're going to start, all the nations are going to have to start scrambling to get back into the manufacturing business the way that we used to 50 years ago. These sorts of things, right? And we'll have to do it just for national security, but also out of need, because China is so devastated that they could not get their factories producing, even under threats from the CCP. And it's so bad in China right now that the factory owners are burning down their factories because I kid you not. Okay. And here's why they're doing it. There's no insurance. They're not trying to collect insurance or anything, but they're between a bullet and the CCP, because the CCP says to them, you will get back to work. Before they'd said, you will turn on all your machinery and everything. You must use electricity. And so they were basically saying, you must make it look as though you're going back to work. This was a couple of months back, right? And so they'd turn on all the machinery, but nothing was ever coming out. Well, the world caught on to that. And so now, recently, in the last 3 weeks, the CCP has been saying to these small business owners, you will get back into production. You will produce goods that can be shipped. We expect to have X number of tons outside your loading dock here real soon. Well, and then the small business owner basically says, oh shit, they're going to shoot me, because I can't do that because I don't have workers. The other factories that supply me don't have workers, so I don't have supplies from those other factories. I cannot produce what cannot be produced. And they're under threats from the CCP, so they've decided that the easiest way to get out of it is to burn down their factories.
Oh, they're going through the exact same thing that Chairman Mao went through with his, I have a 5-year plan. Everybody melt down metal,
Right. And but it's worse. It's worse than that now, because the Mao was an amateur compared to the current crop of the CCP. Okay, they're dialed in with technology and all of that. Now there's something else. Their technology is failing them. Their surveillance state is failing them, and they don't know. They actually don't know quite a bit about the disease they've let loose, and they don't know enough about the parameters of the disease. And now they're actually having to admit that they're having to sample their own population to find things out. And so the CCP finds themselves into the position where every one of their actions is starting to betray previous cover-ups and these sorts of things. So they're so ignorant of what's going on now. They want to know basically how far is this spread in their population? How many people in the Chinese population are asymptomatic carriers? And here's their conundrum, and here's how their approach is going to be. So they're going to sample 11,000 people randomly throughout China. I don't know how random it is, but we can let that aside. And they're looking for asymptomatic carriers of this disease. If they find that there's a significant portion of those 11,000 people theoretically chosen at random that have the disease and test positive, then China may decide to relax all quarantines. They may decide it's so far into humanity that there's absolutely no point anymore to relaxing or to trying to maintain quarantines, because their power base is suffering as a result of that. People are actively rebelling. So they're caught between the pressures of the populace being continually locked down versus the idea that it may be so progressed through the species that from their viewpoint, there's very little to be gained by quarantining people, and they're going to be better off just letting it run through the population. And if they lose, a third of China, if a third of China dies from this, well, they'll accept it. And that's what Xi Jinping said on December 9th. He said, when the event is past, China will be more wealthy. And he was not talking about, he was talking about individual Chinese would be more wealthy. And the only way you're going to get an individual Chinese fellow to be more wealthy is to have more wealth to distribute to fewer Chinese guys. And so that's what he was actually describing. And that's what I think they'll do. I think that after they come out with this survey, they'll basically say the disease, not bioweapon, because they don't characterize it that way, is it throughout humanity, and so there's no point to quarantine anymore. Let those who are going to die die. And well, that's fine for the CCP to say, but the rest of us may not take that particular approach to this.
Yeah, I'm. As you're actually talking, I'm literally like at war with something on my damn computer. It's
Yeah, it's the trolls guy. I know. I'm toxic. They don't like me.
they're trying to use Outlook to like access whatever the hell they're trying to access. Oh,
Yeah,
screw you, Chinese bastards.
Yeah, I threw Outlook out a long time ago. I've got my machines hardened off. You can go and find out how to do this on any number of computing forums, especially with Windows 10. There are some scripts you can run that'll remove a lot of the backdoors and the open holes in it. And, especially for me in my line of work, it's been necessary.
Yeah, I mean, what is your general advice? Say that like you have people watching that don't have it, they don't have any symptoms. They're checking their temperature, their chaga. Number one, get you some chaga. Number two, get you some vitamin C and just load up on like vitamin C and
so here's the thing. I was to say you need vitamin D as well, because it cooperates with both the chaga and the vitamin C, and you need a source of zinc. You can get away with what the chaga provides, but you're better off supplementing, in my opinion. And so zinc, you need to look for zinc that's got a ratio of 15 milligrams of zinc to 1 milligram of copper. And usually they'll call it balanced zinc. And I take 2 of those, okay, because I want to get 30 milligrams of zinc, because that's been shown to be a big antivirus protecting agent. So Chris Martenson was talking on his show, Peak Prosperity, was talking about he's a pathologist, and so he was talking about the pathology and dead people talking and telling you things via data. And he was saying, just happened to make a conclusion that he would not want to get this because of all of the very negative residual effects, regardless of whether or not you came through it relatively unscathed. Right? You're still going to have damage. So my way of thinking is you take the C, you take the chaga, you take vitamin D, and you take zinc at a bare minimum, and your body is hardened from getting the disease effects of exposure to the bioweapon. And so that's how we have to characterize it. So I'm good today because I took my supplements today. And if I encounter the bioweapon today, it cannot invade me because my body is hardened today. But those hardening elements wear off. And so I'll be doing this as long as that bioweapon is out in out and about on the planet, right? As long as it's out in the environment, until we find some way of getting rid of it with some other material or a protein or whatever. It doesn't matter. So anyway, so I feel quite confident that I can't get it on standard kinds of exposure. If I were going to go into a hospital, I would take my chaga tea and just drink it constantly as I'm with vitamin C in it as I'm in that hospital, so that any virus that came into me would be destroyed by a constant drinking of this tea. I wouldn't take any chances, even though I feel that my body is inherently protected by the huge amounts of chaga and vitamin C I've got in me already. But really, if you don't have symptomology and so on, you should be fine hardening yourself off and protecting yourself, especially if we were to actually believe the Chinese Navy that they're not being impacted by this, then that's why. is because they don't have chaga, but they've got vast quantities of vitamin C, and they've been taking that stuff under orders since December 25, since Christmas of last year. That's when they sealed up those sub bases and put in all that vitamin C there, and we presume it was being done at other Navy bases as well.
I actually purchased some vitamin C lunges or whatever you call them. And as I'm driving down the road, I put one of those in. If I'm like sitting here typing, I put one of those in. And from what I understand is keeping vitamin C in your saliva helps it line your throat.
That's how the bat works, basically.
Okay.
It has little tiny glandular protrusions that put vitamin C on demand into its saliva, and it circulates throughout its saliva and its gut and in through its blood. Now, we humans have to be careful though, Ben, because you've got to watch your teeth. Okay, if you're doing a lot of these vitamin C lozenges, they can be acidic, and so they could erode enamel and cause tooth problems. All right, so just be advised.
For me.
There you go, then. Okay. Yeah, I understand. So absent that, there's no real downside to your approach, and that's what I would recommend to anybody that's in a first responder position. If you're a firefighter, that you got to go in, or aid guys, or doctors, or nurses, I would be sucking on vitamin C lozenges all the time. Or if I couldn't get hold of those, I would be sucking on elderberry lozenges, although those tend to have sugar in them, and that's a real problem. Sugar makes the symptoms of this very much worse. So people that have had this would wake up and they'd go and have breakfast, and they'd have like sugary cereal or sugar in their coffee, and they'd be incredibly sick for like 5 or 6 hours afterwards until that effect of that sugar wore off. And then some of them smartened up and didn't have any more sugar, and the symptoms were a lot less the following period of time, and they didn't have sugar the next morning, and they were a lot less. So sugar boosts the Prototella bacillus, which in turn boosts the virus. So it's almost could be thought of as being a booster to the virus. So I wouldn't, the elderberry, they've got sweeteners in them, and so that's a real problem. But you can also, all right, so one of the first things I'd ever read about chaga after I had my cancer was of this particular native guy here in the Northwest. And this guy lived in an area, he was a Yakima Indian tribe. Yeah. And so they call it, their word for chaga is more like tasaga. Okay. It sounds very similar. It's very interesting that it sounds so similar. And anyway, so this guy in the Yakima tribe, which is in the dry part of the Badlands in eastern Washington state, had gut problems, was passing blood. He didn't know what it was, but it was obviously fatal. This was like in the 1950s. The white man's medicine couldn't help him out. They just basically told him to go home and to get ready to die. And he goes home to the Yakima tribe, and the shaman there says, well, what you got to do is you got to get up to Ponderai. You got to go up near the Canadian border, and you'll find this shaman up there, and he'll give you some of this tasaga stuff. And you take the tasaga stuff, and he'll give you a big bag of it. And here's a note, and he writes it, and this guy goes off to get the chaga. Anyway, but he was told when he got it that, okay, you've got, basically it was colon cancer. Okay, that's what we would now diagnose it as. And so this fellow was probably within several months of dying, and I've been there myself, so I know exactly what he went through. And what he did was the shaman up in the Ponderai tribe up in near the Canadian border told him, here, you take this mushroom, this cancer of the birch tree, and you put a piece in your mouth, and you just walk around with this piece in your mouth all the time of all the days except for when you're asleep. And what happens is the saliva softens up the hard chaga mushroom chunk, and over time, but it also, while it's doing that, it's leaching out all of the anti-cancer agents and all the antiviral and all of the antibacterial agents that are within that mushroom are being leached out by the saliva. And so it started aiding this guy. He said that he'd started that, and within a day or so, he started having some level of relief. And so the whole article was basically all about how the native medicine was superior to the white man's medicine, because this guy gets cured of colon cancer, even though he'd been told to go home and die with it by the white man's medicine. And what he did for months was to just walk along with a chunk of chaga in his mouth. And so I've examined that. I've talked to some of the TCM guys, the traditional Chinese medicine guys, and they say that technique is not unknown to them, although it's not usually practiced by them. And so I examined it, and it makes sense. You could probably do that as an anti-coronavirus approach as well. And it has no acidity issues or any of that. It does give you vitamins that leach out of it, minerals, zinc, vitamin C, B, even vitamin E is in there. So it probably would be an effective approach.
All right. Everyone watching, I have like real chaga up, like right up here. And what I got is I got a blender here. And I basically, because it's hard. I mean, that stuff
is tough stuff. You got to take a hammer to it.
Yeah, and I put it in here and I blend it up, and I add it in with coffee. It's like you sprinkle some in, or you roast it, or brew it. It's basically I am flooding myself, my wife, my daughter, if she damn listened to me, and it's I'm trying to keep us from getting anything,
right? Well, that's
for
good.
as long as possible.
And see, there's a side benefit from this. Taking this approach with vitamin C and chaga, you're not going to get flu. You're not going to get colds, anything like that kind of stuff. You'll get it and it'll pass extremely quickly because you're preloaded with those things that are antiviral and antibacterial and so on. So it has tendency to make you healthier. Plus the chaga is anti-cancer. So all of these things are good for us anyway. And now we see that we'll probably be doing this for maybe the rest of our lives, simply because of the bioweapon being released and out and about on the planet. And that's the horrific part of it, is that, the CCP has poisoned humanity. We can't ever go back. And now we've got to figure out everything all brand new again. It's kind of interesting at the level of, well, will we or won't we have a shooting war? That's undetermined at this stage, because so many people though are being affected. So what will happen at some point? We now have, for instance, the guy today in the big article in Zero Hedge. It won't be put on Twitter because Twitter has thrown Zero Hedge off there, and it'll throw you off there if you repost Zero Hedge articles like it threw me off, because they work for the Communist Party of China. But this guy wrote an article. He's the discoverer of HIV. He says this cannot be a natural virus. This is an engineered virus, and that means by default it is a bioweapon, because they're not going to engineer a virus to be less lethal. They're not going to engineer a virus to go and clean your toilet.
That's exactly what I told Snippy was, if you have two choices, this is obviously created. We have evidence of them using the CRISPR technology. All right. You have to look, if they created it and it's a negative towards humanity, it's a bioweapon.
Yeah, right? No shit, Sherlock.
If it was positive, it'd be a fucking medicine. Right.
Right. And see the CCP. No, and the CCP is in a battle for their life. All right. The Communist Party is full of ideologues. The ideology matters more than their individual life. The power pyramid is all, and the entire Chinese population is only there to support the Communist Party of China's power pyramid. That's their view of the planet. And everybody else is not Chinese and is therefore not even worth concerning themselves. We're all basically Guai Lo, or animals. And so they're at war with the planet. I think a lot of them are now starting to understand they're at war with the whole planet. But now a lot of them are also starting to understand they're fighting for their own lives because they're at the epicenter of the release of this bioweapon. And it is just destroying China. If we were to take some of the outlandish projections or outlandish reports, not even projections, but reports that were coming out of Wuhan in January before they shut it down, we may suspect that maybe as many as half of 15 million people in Wuhan are dead or damaged from this. All right. And we see that there's been now 23 million phone identities that have dropped off of China's phone
23
company.
million.
Yeah, they didn't transfer to some other service. They're not paying their bills. They're not an active account. They're no longer okay. So they know something's up. The Chinese Communist Party knows something is up. They've altered the metrics that they report from their telcos and from their streaming services. So if you're not paid and you're in the process of being kicked off, they used to report you just the way that everybody else does in terms of, YouTube losing subscribers, that kind of thing, or Twitter losing subscribers. A certain amount are always fading off as a certain amount are coming on, right? And there's a way, a metric of reporting that. They're not reporting that anymore. So they know that people are looking at their phone records. They know that people are watching the stream volumes, and they've shut that down. You can't even get access to the fake numbers that they were reporting. But before the fake numbers disappeared, I was looking at their streaming services, right? Their top 3 streaming services, and their top 3 streaming services were basically free through February and March because the Chinese government had everybody in lockdown. And during that period of time, they lost 40 million people, 40 million accounts stopped being active. And they went from active to inactive in this period of less than 30 days. And so they didn't fade off. They just didn't have any more activity. So they died, or they decided they just weren't interested in watching any TV.
Well, I don't think that they're not interested in watching TV. And see, this is the tangible evidence that we can actually look at and go, okay, what the hell is that? And it's things like that really, because none of us are really being told the truth by any side. America's not really telling the truth. China definitely in the hell ain't telling the truth. And so the American people are reaching out to anybody with knowledge. And that's why I'm reaching out to you, because I'm like, all right, I don't trust not a damn son of a bitch right now. And you're the only one I've watched. And I've seen the progressive of your knowledge, and it's all lining up. And
it's
so
being
I'm
validated.
like, all right, my viewers, I want to have Clif on so they see what I see in case they don't watch it.
Right. And the interesting thing now is, look, we've got, let's see, it's the 17th of April. And so I've been doing this since December. See, so I mean, I've been living with this stuff for 5 months. And just now, some people have only been living with it for maybe 6 weeks. And in like Snippy's case, he's only been in lockdown for 3 weeks or something, right? Whenever they did that in Florida. But my thing here is that now, at last, we're getting academics and scientists that are willing to come on out and say that this was engineered. And we're getting prominent guys like the discoverer of the HIV virus coming on out and saying this is engineered, could not possibly be natural. And so the story that the CCP is putting out is breaking down, even though they went to such huge efforts and likely killed so many people trying to maintain that fictional paradigm, that story of how this was natural, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're even having to backfill on some of their lies and develop new lies that are interim. And so now you've got part of the Communist Party saying, yeah, it escaped from a lab, but it wasn't a weapon. We didn't make it. We were just studying a natural virus to prove we were as good at it as the Americans. It's like, say what?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You guys have got that much of an inferiority complex. Sure.
Plus, the com, the Communist Party a couple days ago put out a contract that showed that there was a university here in the U.S. that actually hired them through the agency that the guy Trump has sitting next to him runs. That's like, we dropped the vial, but that's the son of a bitch that ordered it.
Yeah. And here's the hell of it. Okay, so here's the hell of it. If you really reach into this, if you want to get deep into the conspiracy part of it, all of that was paid for by two outfits out of the city of London, which are intimately connected and indivisibly connected with the Tavistock Institute. Okay, long known for eugenics, long known for promoting psychiatry to the Russians as a way of controlling their dissidents, long known for promoting the eugenics program of Hitler, and here they are promoting the eugenics of the CCP.
They, if I recall correctly, they actually participated in Operation Paperclip, didn't they?
Yeah. They were vetting who went where and so on. Tavistock is deep into this, but this is the interesting part of it. Our version of Tavistock over here is called the Council on Foreign Relations. Okay, and look at how those guys play. They were the ones that decided Tulsi could not be an effective Democratic candidate. Okay, they were the ones that her own organization, she's a member, and they came on in and said, well, always keep your enemies close. And they got her close and they shafted her like that. They're the ones that control the entire liberal democracy narrative within the US. And I'm making some very interesting predictions now based on my understanding of how this shit's going to unfold, that we're going to have this huge fourth turning. And so people that are now members of the Council on Foreign Relations are going to soon be standing up there saying, no, I'm not a Communist Party supporter. No, I didn't do this. No. I was only, I'm only a third degree Freemason kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a party member. I just was doing it for business advantage. I'm not one of these evil fuckers. So they will start repudiating. And we'll see a lot of these things be repudiated because the CCP is like any other criminal organization. They're going to rat out everybody that they've dealt with in order to cause as much chaos in the general area as possible so that it doesn't all come down on them. That's their thinking. Ultimately, it'll all come down on them anyway because they're rat bastards. And the Chinese people will be revolting on the inside of the country in huge ways. There will be so much in the way of death around the planet that we might end up losing 1 billion people. Okay, so, as the old reports way the hell back said. And if that's the case, if it's even a few 100 million, the impact is that, that we will see the eradication, along with all those lives, we will see the eradication of the Communist Party of China. It will take time. All right, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years, but they're going because so many people now know outside, and they're going to be isolated, ringed in, hemmed in, denied resources, put pressure on, their own population is going to revolt, and they're going to get it from top and from bottom at the same time.
This is why I think Trump has actually been defunding the WHO and defunding the World Trade Organization, not re-upping the judges in the World Trade Court. Right. He's slowly plucking all the money out of them, and that actually ties in. I remember one of your reports explained how this would all collapse because the currency that they were bribed in would go away.
would have no value. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And
Right.
it's all laying out. And what I see is in 2017, all the reports you were getting are now dead to dead on. It's like if you could have taken 18 and 19 and threw them out.
Well, not necessarily throw them out. Maybe they're further out into the future. So maybe
I see what you're saying.
Maybe the whole timing thing was off by 3 years. That kind of stuff happens a lot. And 2017 was when the cancer was raging in me. And so I could not do the ordinary maintenance that I had been maintaining for 20 plus years on my system. For probably from October of 2016 onward, even though I did not know what was going on and was desperately spending thousands of dollars on doctors and so forth, I was reduced, getting down to basically only being able to work maybe an hour and a half a day because of the effect of the cancer. And so I had to necessarily let all kinds of maintenance go. And it could have piled up to a 3-year time discrepancy in the timing predictions.
Well, whatever happened, I don't care. You put out good information for now. And this is how good this conversation is. I'm drinking cold coffee.
so am I.
Enjoying the hell out of it. I think that as horrible as this event is, and how many people we're going to lose in this event, I don't want to say it's a good thing. It's revealing a lot of truth. And I would rather have everyone watch your show in the whole world, just watch you like every night.
Oh, God, scare the crap out of me.
But it's every global transition or turning has had to have a pain point to originate that turning. And like I said, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it had to be something that slapped everyone awake.
Well, here's something else too, Ben. This is a very unique situation, okay? And you're incredibly spot on in your observation. Every nation in every one of its turnings has had a pain point. This particular pain point is unique, okay? And it had to be this way because of karma, and we can just let it go at that, okay? We needn't explain it any further. That's why I like the Hindu approach to this, it's karma, You don't have to take it on board so much and try and figure out why of things, but we just take this as karma. But here's an interesting thing. You are correct. Every nation has this pain point as they go through their turnings, and every nation suffers, and we all stand around and in history, we watch this occur. But this is unique because this is the first time there's ever been a bioweapon released. And this is a unique pain point for all of humanity. So this is the first time that we're aware of, and certainly the first time in modern humanity. So the first time in 12,000 years that we have had a global pain point. So now all of our karma, if we want to think about this, is now linked. It's now all operating at the same level. Before, for instance, we would have the winners and losers in wars. And the loser was obviously, revealing their issues and getting out their bad karma, if we want to put it that way, as well as the winners, because they went through hell in order to win. And so those two contesting parties had their karma joined, and they got to a turning point that involved all kinds of pain for each of those countries. And even when we said we had world wars, they were sequential or staccato. It was not a continuous, correct. And so now we have a very unique thing where all of humanity is going through the same pain point in all countries from the same origin, all at the same time, and we're linked now forever, and we're all in sync from this point forward. So that's why I say that the CCP poisoned humanity, because our entire species is now having to react as a complete species, not national. We're sharing information and technique and everything, trying to overcome this constantly around all borders. Borders and nationalities no longer matter. Now, though, what does matter is which tribe you are in. Are you in humanity, or are you in the little tiny vertically integrated CCP, right? Because all of humanity is now struggling, trying to keep their ass alive and to get out of the greatest depression ever to hit the economic system. And the economic system will reel for 18 years. We'll be living with this for 18 years economically. And that's a good scenario. Go ahead.
So this might sound crazy, but I think it's right. So this event triggered a synchronicity in the frequency of the collective consciousness of humanity.
Not a synchronicity, but a synchronizing.
Right. Synchronizing of our collective consciousness, aware of the event and aligning us all up.
Well, look at it this way. Ben, the truck driver, has exactly the same concerns as any worker in China or India or Africa or Finland or England. Now we're all reacting to, and before that was never the case. In Wuhan, prior to this, their issue was pollution. So much so that they had to stage protests and stuff. And you were likely totally ignorant of it, totally unaware of it. And you weren't suffering what they were suffering, but now you are instantly aware of what they're suffering because you have it in your environment as well. So you're quite correct. This is a synchronizing event that's never existed before in humanity.
So could we apply for a timeline the Fibonacci emotional waves?
You might be able to do so. I don't know that it's meaningful necessarily, okay? But the wave idea is, I mean, I don't know that the Fibonacci sequence is particularly applicable to where we're at. But I do know that China is, so that we're all in sync, okay? China is at one point, we can think they're 6 months ahead of us. But 6 months is still one great year, one part of the single evolution of the planet. So they're in the moment with us. But all of us are still in the situation of being in the same wave at the same time. So right now, China is in discovery that, the lockdown didn't work. So they're discovering some of the same stuff that we are. Lockdowns don't work necessarily. People get ill the minute you release them, right? And so we're still in the same discovery mode, and all of the planet is in discovery mode about our enemy at this stage. So if we want to think about it this way, this is like Independence Day. And we're all clustered in Area 51 trying to discover things about our enemy in that wrecked spaceship, right? And we don't know what it is we're going to have to come up with to deal with this enemy. But we do know that there's two enemies of humanity, the bioweapon and the CCP that let it loose. Now, we also have to acknowledge that in the cleaning up the CCP, we will have to clean up our own corrupt power elite. But they seem to be dying and fading away with the celebrity culture anyway. You know, who cares if you're the Queen of England or her son or any of that, if there's no crowds, if you're not allowed to go out, you know, unless you've got that personal magnetism and the structure of tourism and stuff, you're nothing. You're just a regular old CEO who can be quickly assassinated and no one will give a rat's ass. And it's at that level that we're rapidly proceeding. So There's a lot that's unknown about this, but some of the general larger trends can be picked out even now. And we can see now, we know that it takes about 5 months for mainstream media to catch up to the woo-woo guys. So I discovered, like I said, on December 9th of 2019 that a bioweapon had been released. That idea solidified in my mind. I couldn't believe it. I went through the horrors of trying to reconcile myself to that. And it took me until December 25th to really get with it, although I started speaking out about it earlier than that. But even so we're looking at 5 months here. So if that's the case, then we can say it'll take another 5 months, perhaps, for mainstream media and our power elite to get on the wagon and understand they're at war with the CCP. So over the next 5 months, maybe we'll see some big movements. Maybe we'll see Twitter be constrained in some manner by the power structure here in the United States. Maybe we'll see that the telcos decide they'll no longer provide Twitter access to servers outside of certain areas. So other people will take their actions on their own, independently of governments. Corporations will do this, and they'll do it out of their own interest. So, for instance, the telcos in Norway and Sweden are thinking of taking particular actions, regardless of what their governments may feel about it relative to 5G and Huawei. So a lot of this stuff is coming down. It's coming out into the open. And as I say, 5 months from now, we should be able to say, okay, we're at war with the CCP, but at least we will have recognized it's a bioweapon, and we'll be adult about it, and we won't have doctors and nurses dying because they think it's, an adjunct to the flu.
Gotcha. One last thing. If you had a couple of minutes with Trump or some leadership at all, and you were able to grab their face and say, do this as of right now. This is what would you recommend that a structure of government that we have, what would you do?
I would tell them without fail, tell all military and all law enforcement that they are required to maintain 22 milligrams of vitamin C per pound of body weight, and they are required to take 5,000 units of vitamin D3 a day. If they do that, you'll see a huge turnaround. The reason you'll see a huge turnaround is because you'll instantly be hardening all of your military and all these kind of personnel against the bioweapon, and fewer of them will get sick, and it'll become very apparent within mere weeks, all right, that they're not getting ill at the same rate that they used to. And you'll suddenly see the illnesses on the aircraft carriers and everything just flatten right out. And you will be amazed at how rapidly that will work. And then it changes all your thinking. Then you can go on out and tell the rest of the populace, it's a bioweapon, but hey, don't freak out, because we understand how to deal with it. And it's cheap, it's effective, it'll even make you feel better. And if they could get chaga in them, that would seriously help as well. And then I would say, and then if you want to get serious, tell those doctors to come and talk to me about treatment ways.
Yeah,
I've been going through some of my resources. Okay, I mean,
a little light reading, huh?
Yeah, this is the small one on top of the stack. Okay, and so I've been going through examining what is the potential, because see, I have to figure it this way. I'm feeling really good, Ben, because that guy with the HIV article came out in Zero Hedge today. It's a huge temporal marker, giant, you just cannot believe. But so I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm no longer as doom and gloom, because I think we will make it, and I think our power structures will wise up. But I was actually contemplating I'm not a physician, but what if I have to start supplying medicines to people? What is in my local pharmacology of plants around me that can do the job if the infrastructure around me falls away and I'm basically healthy but have to deal with a lot of individuals who are going to have various different kinds of ailments. And so I was really looking at it at a doom and gloom level. But I think that if we can get any of the power structure, that's why I've been bitching so long. If Princess Cruises had taken that effect and told all their crew people and everybody on those ships to take the vitamin C, they would have stopped the spread of it, boom, just like that. And then they could have proved that over the course of time as fewer and fewer people got ill and those started recovering. So that would do it, that alone. So I would love to be able to get hold of the power structure guys and go, whoa, pay attention.
Well, I have a friend in Texas who has an acquaintance that is on part of the health environment of Trump. So I'm going to send him this video and tell him, send this to your buddy up in DC. And I don't care if I got to drive over to DC and hold his head in front of this video and go, watch this guy's, you were the first person that was like waving your arms going, hey guys, we got an issue. And luckily, I'm smart enough to watch smart people. So as you're waving your hands, I'm like, wait, if Clif is waving his hand, then not to bring it up for no reason, but when you got emotional is when it really kind of snapped with me, because I'm like, wait, Clif is not a crier. Right? I've never seen him get emotional in the years we watched.
I'd been working 20-hour days trying to get my family and get everybody else prepared at that point, and had literally run up to a point of exhaustion. I slept for 2 days after that. And it was because of that exhaustion that I got that emotional about it. But also the idea of, so many people dying and the impacts and so on. But I'm glad it reached you, Ben. I'm glad that we actually had that happen, because every single person that does this is a fire break. It's one person that can't get it, right?
Yep. And everyone watching this right now, you have my permission to download this, put it on your own channel. This episode, I hold no copyright at all. I translate it, put it into I don't care if you put it on a thumb drive and mail it to whoever. Take it and get it out there. Retweet it. Do not tag me. Do not tag Clif. Who says it is irrelevant. Get the information out there. Send this to your mom. Send it to your dad. Send it to your stupid liberal brother like I got. And just tell them, look, I don't care. Just watch this. Watch it. If you never talk to me again, watch this.
It's tough, Ben.
Do me one favor. And because the only way we're going to win is if we fight. And how we can fight is we can share information. So that's
and we have to be adults. We've got to use adult language about it. And and it's tough for us old men, right? Old men cry from compassion. We don't cry from weakness. And so we have compassion for those around us that are going to suffer, that need not, if we can make them understand now. And I gotta go and get some coffee, guy. It's early in the morning.
I need hot coffee. All right, guys. Clif, thank you so much for your hard work, your dedication, and your research and your time. You are a gem to the world.
Karma.
Hey, well, I send you good karma, my friend.
Okay, well, same to you, Ben. You keep getting the word out. Keep hammering on the normies.
And I'll never give up until I give up breathing.
There you go.
All right, guys. Everyone have a great day. Clif, you have a great day, brother.
Okay, I'll talk to you later, Ben.
Bye-bye. All right, guys and gals. I didn't want to get emotional at the end of it, but You know me, hell with it. I'll cry at the drop of a hat. And I just dropped my hat. So everyone have a great day. I have this on Patreon right now. I'm just going to shoot it out to the general public. I appreciate you guys watching on Patreon. Uh, have a great day. Get this video out. Love you guys. All right, bye-bye.